Welcome to the World Communion Sunday podcast,
brought to you by Global Ministries and Higher Education and Ministries.
Today, we're talking about this vitally important Sunday in our church's calendar and how your local church can get involved.
Thanks for joining us as we get ready for World Communion Sunday.
All right, well, welcome to the World Communion Sunday podcast, that podcast where we count down to the first Sunday in October, that vitally important Sunday in our church's history. We're super excited today to have Lisa Katzenstein with us. I'm super excited you're here, Lisa. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm glad to be with you.
Oh, great. Well, why don't you tell us, who is Lisa? Give us, your story in 30 seconds. I know that's hard to do.
Well, I've been here as the administrator of the Scholarship and Leadership Development Program for 12 years now. And I actually have a fine arts background, but I worked for a long time in social justice issues. So the combination bringing to me, very, very important to my heart is impact on transforming the world. Basically,
very cool.
That's it. So this is my commitment.
Nice. That's great. So now for people who are unaware, now I know you find it hard to believe that there are people that would be unaware of what World Communion Sunday is, but what is World Communion Sunday? What would you say to someone who's never heard of this before?
A World Communion Sunday is an act that's celebrated the first Sunday in October, and it's a celebration of that bridges denominations, bringing us together. It's about inclusivity, and I think really at its most basic is showing that we all have a place at the Lord's table, and this is in its essence what undergirds what the World Communion Scholarship Program is, which brings people from communities of color and develops leadership within the church, the United Methodist Church.
Very cool. Now, you mentioned that this is obviously a Sunday that's shared by a number of movements, a number of parts of the body of Christ. Why is our church, particularly the United Methodist Church, so excited and kind of committed to World Communion Sunday?
Because let me talk about what it funds.
Sure. Let's do that.
Brings, which is it supports people who are transforming the world, and our commitment at its most basic is about transformation of the world and impact in communities of need. So I think in its most Wesleyan, most United Methodist essence, this is in our lifeblood and what we most want to do. So this is our direct line, our direct support to the. I get extraordinarily enthusiastic when in talking about the students who we're funding, the scholars who we've supported, because they are the people who are on the ground, who are actually doing this transformative work in their communities.
Well, could you give us an example of a student or two, that would kind of represent just some of the positive work that'll come out of World Communion Sunday? Just an example of someone over the years. I'm sure there's someone who kind of sticks out.
There are so many.
I know, it's hard to narrow it down to a few, I realize.
And speaking of transformation, I would just like to add that the way the students who we are funding have transformed us and helped us learn what it is to work in community, work inside communities that of need, has been a transformative process both for us and for them. And that I guess I'd like to focus right now. We have an event coming up in 2 weeks, which will be in Zimbabwe in just about a week and a half, actually. We're bringing together 12 people, 10 of whom, I'm one, and another is our missionary, Reverend Pat Watkins on Creation Care Ministries. And so we're bringing together 10 people, 10 students, six of whom are World Communion scholars.
Wow, that's cool.
And they're in environmental or related studies because some are current students, some are graduates. So either in environmental studies, it could be environmental education, waste management, whereas it intersects with public health. And the idea is that we're bringing together these young people who have done incredible work in their studies. And the idea is to have a conversation, sit around the table and come up with several practical applicable actions that will have environmental impact that can be used at the local church level around the world.
Wow.
And in many ways, it's an opportunity to young people don't always have, especially in different cultures, don't always have the voice or the space to be heard. And this is our engagement or accompaniment process with them. I always hesitate to use the word empowerment because we are not empowering them. They are empowered. We are just facilitating the possibility for their conversation and their ability to come up with concrete action plans that can be used, as I said, I'm repeating myself, but at really practical responses at the local church level around the world. One of our lead people is a recent graduate who, his name is Dinkin Calbeth. He's from Nigeria, and he just completed his master's program in environmental studies. And it all sort of began with an email conversation with him saying, okay, Dinkin, you've just finished your studies. What now? The world needs you. The world needs you desperately. What now? What do we do? How do we engage in conversation? How do we bring other people into it? And so Dinkin, Pat Watkins, who I had mentioned before, and I formed a coordinating team to begin developing the idea. How are we going to bring other people and have these conversations and make something actual and concrete happen out of them? Some of the other World Communion scholars, as I had mentioned, Shamiso Mupara is from Zimbabwe and is studying at the University of Botswana, doing her master's degree. Actually, I have my nervousness. I want to get my list. Hold on just a second. Ben Kabwe did his. Global Ministry supported him for his master's in public health, but his undergraduate degree was in environmental studies. And Ofelia Duldulau, who's from the Philippines, is getting her master's in environmental education. And Abelardo Guerrero, who is also from the Philippines, who's really in rural development, but as his work intersects with the environmental work at the local community level. So it's going to be a dynamic conversation, and this, I think, is an example of the embodiment of the Global Ministries program, where important in this conversation is that what we realize and learn from our students is that the most important part of the work that we do is actually not while a person is studying, but what he or she will do when he or she has completed his or her studies. So what are they doing to impact communities?
Right. Well, I love that. I love one thing you said there that, just in passing, I love that you talked about was, how you're trying to create really a platform, or we're trying to create a platform for people to create change around the world.
Yes.
And by being a part of World Communion Sunday, you're being, churches are a part of that platform creation process, which is exciting. All of these students that are going to make an incredible impact in a wide variety of fields, you and I have an opportunity to be a part of that. Now, we've talked a lot about, obviously, I'm super excited we caught you before you got to Zimbabwe. Would love to hear when you get back, report on that. But what other areas besides environmental, issues, which obviously are super important, are there other areas that this program supports?
Absolutely. The principal role of the World Communion Scholarship at Global Ministries is to develop. It's meant to be the premier scholarship program for the United Methodist Church, and the idea is to really focus on who are the stellar people, really capable, really committed people who we can fund. And the idea is, I'm sorry, I'm coming around the bend to answer your question.
That's great.
The idea is to find, it's not a scholarship for individual career advancement. It's really to build church leadership in a variety of disciplines and finding those people who are going to have the greatest possible impact in their community. So the strategy, the hand action of doing this to do this. So we're finding targeted, strategic people who are going to have that broad impact in their community. So whether it's theological studies in preparation for ordained ministry, it could be doctors, it could be public health specialists, teachers, accountants in the church, sustainable development, rural development, gender studies. It runs the whole gamut of everything that is important at the community and church level around the world. And it might be important to add here that who determines what those priorities are partners on the ground. So an important role for us through this office and through our regional execs and through our partners at GBHEM is in conversation with our partners on the ground to understand what those priorities are. And those priorities can shift and change from either, it could be from day to day. If an earthquake happens, a natural disaster happens, then whatever may have been viewed as priority all of a sudden shifts. Right. Which brings me actually to another interesting sort of new element is, say, disaster risk reduction, where in what if with flooding and landslides, if someone is studying forestry and dealing with the planting of trees, or actually the disaster risk reduction in and of itself. So it depends on what the needs are in the different communities around the world.
Very cool. I love that focus on really allowing the field, people in communities around the world to define what are those areas that are going to have the greatest impact in our community. That's obviously one of the strengths of this program. These aren't people in some office far away making those decisions.
Exactly.
They're being defined on the ground, which is fantastic. So just as we wrap up, what would you say to a church leader or someone in a local church they maybe haven't been a part of World Communion Sunday in the past? They've for whatever reason have opted out. What would you say to them? How would you encourage them?
I would, based on my passion, based on our passion, and commitment to the transformative power of these young people, and they're not all young people. I mean, there's a whole range of folks who are being supported, but the direct link that happens in the offering on World Communion Sunday, that then leads to our ability to fund someone, and then their impact in the community, which then comes all the way around. I actually have been speaking only of international folks, but we fund, really important is people from communities of color in the U.S. And also of that inclusive nature and the need of the United Methodist Church to engage people of color in our communities in the U.S. So there's a dynamic growth and spirit and impact and change that goes on. So from the pew to the transformation and the idea of people at the table is extraordinary, and we I'm not sure better how to describe it, that the need is great for supporting our young people in the U.S. and around the world to bring our church together and make for a better world. I'm not sure how better to say it.
Oh, absolutely. Lisa, I really appreciate you being on the show today. I know you're just about to hop on a plane and head to Zimbabwe, so I appreciate you giving us some time today.
Thank you so much, Rich. It was great to be in conversation with you.
Thank you for joining us for the World Communion Sunday podcast. Join us as we celebrate this vitally important Sunday in our church calendar.